Have you ever looked around and felt entirely frozen in place? Everyone you know seems to be moving effortlessly forward, advancing their lives, while you're trapped on the exact same starting square. In the small village of Valenpur, the roosters crowing and the tea stalls opening signal the start of another routine morning in a quiet return home. Before leaving, his mother hands him a steel lunchbox packed with his favorite lemon rice. It's a gentle, loving gesture, but it also creates a subtle form of passive pressure, turning a simple meal into an unspoken reminder of her unwavering hope for his success. Outside, his father pauses from repairing an old bicycle, looks up, and says simply, "Do your best." Those three quiet words carry years of heavy, unfulfilled family expectations. Aarav steps onto the crowded city bus, clutching a printed resume and the invisible, crushing weight of his family's future. On this seventh attempt, his entire sense of self-worth is on the line. Stepping off the bus and into a bright, modern corporate waiting room creates immediate friction. The sterile, high-pressure environment of the city stands in harsh contrast to the quiet dirt roads of Valenpur, making Aarav feel intensely alienated before his name is even called. This visual model of cognitive overload demonstrates exactly what happens in these high-stakes environments. As external pressure mounts, the brain triggers a severe freeze response, heavily restricting access through your neural pathways and creating a complete bottleneck to your memory center. This biological reaction hits Aarav right in the middle of his interview. The hiring manager asks a complex question, and the pressure peaks. The connection to the information he spent weeks studying suddenly severs, leaving him in absolute mental silence. For the next 20 agonizing minutes, Aarav falters. He struggles to piece together coherent sentences until the manager finally ends the misery with a polite smile and a highly coded dismissal. "Thank you for coming." The interview reveals a terrifying internal reality. Under enough pressure, Aarav's own mind can effectively lock him out. He leaves the room shaken, realizing that the weight of expectation has become a physical barrier to his own thoughts. Sitting alone on a bench outside the office building, the shock sets in. Loud cars honk, pedestrians rush by, people laugh on their phones. The chaotic, continuous movement of the city around him only amplifies his internal paralysis and isolation. Then comes the modern mechanism of failure. His phone vibrates, delivering an immediate sterile text message confirming that another candidate has been selected. There is no feedback or conversation, just a cold digital notification offering zero closure. The long bus ride home drags on. Outside his window, farmers are returning from the fields and children are playing cricket. The simple, rhythmic continuity of village life rolls past, contrasting sharply with his own paralyzed emotional state. When he finally reaches his front door, the reaction from his parents is devastatingly quiet. His mother takes the untouched lunchbox without asking a single question, and his father remains entirely silent. They already know exactly how the day ended. That absolute silence acts as the final catalyst. It confirms Aarav's growing belief that he is fundamentally ill-suited for the life he's been chasing, leading him to abandon his dreams entirely. The very next morning, Aarav makes a concrete decision. He resolves to leave Valenpur forever and stop pouring his energy into a career path that yields nothing but rejection. Before packing his bags, he makes one final, nostalgic visit to his late grandfather's abandoned house. The space has sat completely untouched for 15 years, holding nothing but broken furniture and heavy layers of undisturbed memories. When we officially surrender a highly stressful goal, our brains undergo a process called perceptual broadening. By letting go of the intense pressure to succeed, our severe tunnel vision evaporates, allowing us to suddenly notice peripheral details we would normally ignore. Because Aarav is no longer blindingly focused on forcing a specific career, his eyes pick up on a subtle physical anomaly. Beneath an old study table, a single wooden floorboard is a slightly different color than the rest. He kneels down and touches the wood. The plank shifts. Prying it loose, he uncovers a heavy, dust-covered wooden box locked with aged green brass and carved with a strange, unrecognizable symbol. He pries the box open. peeling back a layer of faded cloth to reveal an ancient leather journal. When he turns to the very first page, there is exactly one sentence written: "If you are reading this, your real life begins today." This string of failures ultimately forced a state of total surrender. By reaching rock bottom, Aarav finally cleared the mental noise and cognitive bottlenecks that had blinded him for years. This internal shift allowed him to notice the legacy literally hidden beneath his feet, turning a moment of absolute defeat into the discovery he was looking for all along. Every morning at 9, Aarav woke up to a reality he was desperate to avoid. His inbox was filled with rejection letters, and sleeping late had become his only way to delay the frustration of another unproductive day. When he entered his grandfather's abandoned house, the atmosphere changed. He found an old journal that felt impossibly heavy for its size. As he touched the cover, the birds outside stopped singing, leaving the room in a heavy, artificial silence. The book looked every bit of its 50 years, with yellowed pages that smelled of sandalwood. But the handwriting inside was different. The ink was vibrant and crisp, as if the words had been written moments before he arrived. Aarav turned the pages, looking for a specific plan or a set of instructions. He hoped his grandfather had left behind a clear guide to help him fix his failing life. He expected the physical weight of the journal to be matched by volumes of dense advice. Instead, he found an artifact that seemed to contain almost nothing at all. Every page he flipped through was a void of blank paper, except for one solitary sentence written at the very beginning: "Before changing your life, change your mornings." Aarav stared at the page, waiting for more to appear. He felt a surge of frustration. There were no explanations, no context, and no roadmap for what came next. He was left with a heavy, ancient legacy that demanded nothing more and nothing less than a change to his alarm clock. His perspective shifted when he found an old photograph hidden on the wall, revealing a side of his grandfather he had never seen. The man he remembered as a simple farmer was standing at the center of a group of professionals, doctors, graduates, and business leaders who all looked at him with profound gratitude. Hidden behind the frame was a short note in faded ink: "A life becomes meaningful only when it changes another life." That evening, his mother recalled his grandfather's final days. He had been certain the journal would find its way to the right person when the time finally came. The journal remained empty because it was waiting for action. The instruction to change his mornings was the first requirement Aarav had to meet before the rest of the book would reveal its contents. Late that night, Aarav realized that if he didn't introduce a new action into his life, the cycle of disappointment he was living in would simply continue forever. When the alarm went off at 5 a.m., the resistance was physical. The room was cold, the village was dark, and every instinct told him to stay under the covers. This scale shows the psychological weight Aarav was fighting. On one side, months of failure and comfort. On the other, the tiny choice to wake up early. As Aarav forces himself to sit up, this single small movement shatters his usual routine. Waking up at 5 provides the leverage needed to disrupt a cycle that previously felt impossible to break. Aarav stepped outside into the pre-dawn silence. The village was completely still, with every house around him still dark and asleep. The rejections in his inbox remained, and his bank balance hadn't changed. Yet standing in the cold air before the sun rose, Aarav felt as though he was finally gaining a head start on his own problems. The journal's instructions suggested that clarity and momentum are found in the hours before the rest of the world begins its day. Controlling the start of his day was the first step toward accessing the lessons still hidden in those blank pages. However, Aarav was not as alone in the morning fog as he thought. A figure watched him from beneath a banyan tree, holding an object that bore the exact same carved symbol found on the journal's cover. Changing a personal habit was just the beginning of a much larger, active mission, and his progress was already being tracked.